Amazing. You will do amazing things, sung by Michael Gott. And the interesting thing about this song is that it's such a great fit for our theme for this month, spiritual living through community service. And each one of us has something to do. Each one of us has a gift, a talent, or time that we can contribute to this life that we live, whether it's on a macro scale or right here in the community where you are. Last Sunday, our scripture that was so appropriate for this time was from 1 Corinthians 12, 4, 6, and it reads, "There are diversities of gifts, but the same Spirit, and there are diversities of operations, but it is the same God which worketh all in all." So it doesn't matter what your gift is, it's available for use in the body of God. And we're all, every one of us, a part of the body of God. And what I also like about this line of thinking is that it doesn't matter if your gift is big or if it's small. It's so appropriate for when it's needed and it's utilized. It's perfect, just as it is, in that very moment. It doesn't matter if you have $10 million to donate or if you only have one. There's a story in the Bible where Jesus is there amongst the people and people are coming into the temple and they're giving and they're giving, and here's this one woman who comes and she gives what she had, which was a small amount. It was not really comparable in terms of the amount to what others had been giving, but Jesus said that she had given more than anyone else. She gave out of herself. And I want you to expand your thinking now. She gave out of the love of spirit that was running through her. Because when we give, we are experiencing the love of God. And we are experiencing the givingness of God. So the perspective that we're looking at for today in terms of the lesson is that we're all part of this great whole called God, which is a unity. Everything we do impacts the whole, and what happens to the whole happens to us. Thus, we have a logical obligation to give the best we have to the whole, which improves our individual lives as well. And here's the scriptural basis for this. As you give, it is given unto you. Let me repeat that. As you give, it is given unto you. Isn't that amazing? Excuse me. It's really amazing. So we have the ability. We have the ability to bring our gifts and talents. The title of this talk for today is Your Life Isn't For You. Let us discuss the path of service. What do you mean, my life is not for me? That's kind of a crazy, little title, right? It comes out of this principle that we deal with, that we live in this great unity. And each one of us has a connection to the divine. Each one of us have a connection to one another. Each one of us are here to be of service, to be a beneficial presence in some kind of way to one another. You know when the time is because you just do it. What I love about Spirit is that when it's your time, When it's your time to act, you know it. When it's your time to give, especially to the stranger, the one that we call the other, the one that you don't know, for some reason your attention is drawn to them, you know to give. So, the life that is flowing through you at that moment is not your ego life. The life that's flowing through you is the life of spirit. What we know about spirit is that it is full of intelligence and it is full of love. There are other qualities of spirit that we can identify and that we lean toward, but when we're dealing with this thing of service, we're talking about compassion. We're talking about caring. We're talking about love. And the kind of love that you experience when it is compassionate love is not the passionate love that you have for your lover, nor is it the passionate love that you have for the beloved, which is the infinite spirit of life. It is the givingness love of spirit to all. And there is no discrimination. There is nothing there that hinders it. What happens when we're in this place of allowing that love of service to flow through us is that all boundaries that have been created by man just seem to not exist. We can see that through the experience of Hurricane Harvey and how people rose to the occasion to help one another in Houston. Now, what I also love about spirit is that in this pathway of service, we grow in wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And because of the experience of Hurricane Harvey, there was a great amount of intelligence that has gone out for the people in Florida to be prepared to deal with Hurricane Irma. And not only have they had experienced Harvey, we have physically seen through the technology that we have, the devastations that has happened in Cuba, in Baruba, and a few other islands in the Caribbean. We see that. So it's like Spirit says, you don't believe this? Well, let me show you what all of this is. I'm not going to try to assign any meaning to it, but what I can tell you is that we can look at that experience over there and we see that 165 or 120 mile per hour winds. We see what kind of devastation it has done, even with hotels that were built just like hotels right here in the United States of America. To have the high-rise hotels have their windows blow out as a result of the wind. Would that not be a clue? Pay attention. You can do better. So I really applaud. I applaud our government officials that said, evacuate. I really applaud the people who said, pray for me. And those who are not in the pathway said, we're praying you evacuate. We're praying you be safe. We're praying for you to use wisdom and the experience of there. See, sometimes we don't have to have the direct experience to learn something. We can have the indirect experience, and this is one where I would love to just have the indirect experience. Most of us here in California have the direct experience of the earthquake. Wasn't it a crazy thing? It was amazing. We've got all these fires that are burning, and we have these hurricanes going on, and here comes an earthquake in Mexico. This is amazing. What's going on, says Marvin Gaye. What's going on? We ask the question. So even though we're having these physical, quote unquote, disasters, I'm asking the question, what's going on when it comes to the pathway of service. Because what we have observed so far is that people are stepping out of their comfort zones and they are letting out that compassion. They're letting out their love, and they are being of service to one another. That means that quite a bit of love is showing up in our environment. The energy of love is in this environment, and it's increasing because the hurricane hasn't fully hit in Florida the way it is still being projected to do. The only change that I've noticed so far is that instead of the major impact being on the East Coast, late last night before I went to sleep, it was more toward the West Coast. This morning when I woke up, it's that Jose has expanded so much until it will cover the entirety in terms of the width of Florida.
The whole state.
The whole state.
Jose is yet to come.
Jose is yet to come. And it's also that I have an admiration for the storm chasers. An admiration. Looking at this meteorologist standing there in the city of Miami in about 2 feet of water. He's standing there and he's talking and the wind is blowing and he's balancing himself to stay there. But even though he's being paid, there is something about being of service to convey that kind of information in that situation that is of love and care and service to us.
And there's no fake media there.
There is no fake media. That's no fake media. I mean, the airplanes are grounded, so the only one that's flying is who has an airplane up? I think NOAA and the Air Force. They're up there. They're flying above the hurricane so that they can send back credible information, scientific information. And we've never seen a Category 5 hurricane before. These are new. This is new for the planet. This forceful, very forceful. And guess what? We're collecting good scientific data that we won't be able to argue with because what's going on? It's happening. Now, I've talked about the pathway of service, how we can be of service to one another. But why don't we look at it a little bit different? Because when we're being of service to one another, we are in that giving mode. As you give, you receive. Let me talk about the power of giving. I was invited back in 2014, could have been 2015, to a giving opportunity with Cynthia Kersey. Cynthia Kersey is the Chief Humanitarian Officer for the Unstoppable Foundation. Their program, their purpose, their mission is to empower students in Kenya through education. And through empowering the students, they're empowering the parents. They have come to the place of understanding that you can't just go into these villages and say, oh my God, you need to have a school for the kids. There are other things that need to be taught in terms of education such that you don't find yourself in that cycle of poverty. If you don't educate yourself, you can't move out of a particular situation. You find yourself still stuck in it. So not only do they advocate and raise money for the building of schools, but it's for the continuing education of the schools. And it's also for the continuing education of the parents so that the whole village prospers. Now this foundation itself has been in existence less than 10 years. But here's a woman who was not a rich woman at all. She did okay, but she was in the process of trying to find what is the next thing for me to do. She went on this trip to Kenya and she found that there was something there for her. She was excited for some reason. She didn't understand that. While there, she heard of this other lady named Hilda Back. Hilda Back, too, was a woman from some time ago who visited Kenya. And she saw this child, a little boy, and this little boy just took her heart. You know how children are. Some children just really, they manipulate you in such a way that you just fall in love. No matter what they do, you just love them. You want to play with them, you know. And she was just so taken with this young boy that she wanted to do what she could to help him. And she thought about, well, maybe I can pay for his education, because at the time, his parents did not have the money to pay for his education to attend the primary school. So, Kenya, people make something like $40 cents a day. She decided, well, gee whiz, I can help out. And she committed to give $1 a day to help support the education of this little boy. Now, that was really more money than was actually needed. And what Hilda did was she supported him year after year after year. He completed the primary school. When he moved on to secondary school, she supported year after year after year. He eventually graduated, had very good grades, and at that point, this young man decided he really wanted to continue his education. He enrolled in college. He was accepted in a university, got his bachelor's degree, and still decided he wanted more education. And he applied to graduate school. He applied for scholarships. He successfully got those scholarships, and he completed that secondary education in the university system. And after finishing that, he decided that his life's work would be to help empower people to move from that level of poverty into doing better, to empower people. And that all started from $1 a day from another woman. This was a woman who didn't have a whole lot of money. But just think about it. $365 a year. That supported not only a kid's education, but probably paid the teacher, paid the parents' taxes for the child to be in the school. That small amount of money took care of that. What have we done here at our center? When Ursi was with us and she had her school, we were supporting children with their education, and it only cost $25 a year for each student to go to school. What is it that we can do? Now back to Cynthia. Cynthia found out that it would take something like $15 million a year to educate every child in Kenya. Now this sounds like, what did I say? 15 million? No, $15 billion a year to educate every child in Kenya. And you know, this sounds like a really big figure, but let's put it in perspective, because she pulled some numbers. She wanted to have some statistics for comparison for us to think about. And she said, in the U.S., we spend $15 billion just on ice cream a year. A year. We spend we spend $160 billion a year on skincare. We spend $60 billion a year to lose weight. And then here's a good one. We spend $45 billion a year to feed our dogs and cats. Do you think it's possible that we can be of service to one another to help with empowering children in areas where education is really needed, to get the education that's needed such that they can change their lives for the better. Do you think it's possible? I think it's possible. Ernest Holmes says, real giving is the art of transmitting ourselves to others and to the conditions and situations that surround us. This kind of giving is not something for special occasions only, for it should become a habit growing out of our desire to live life to the fullest extent. There's nothing more disheartening than to want to have a conversation with someone who can't have a conversation with you. And the only thing that's left to do is love. Here's an example. Ram Dass. You know who Ram Dass is? Remember, Ram Dass had a stroke, and that stroke really affected him to the point where sometimes he could talk and sometimes he could not. And he was still in the process of conducting interviews and, sharing his good news with people. And when he was not able to talk, he would just look a person directly in the eye, and he would transmit love. Just transmit love through his eyes. Just transmit love. Just sending love. And for some reason, the people who received that love just somewhat knew what he was trying to say, what he wanted conveyed. They received it. So there was still that two-way givingness that was happening. Ernest Holmes says, only that which becomes an inward habit of thought can spontaneously flow from the heart and transmit itself to everything we touch. So what is in our heart to do? What is yours to do? That's the term that we use now to say, well, what is my purpose? What am I supposed to do today? What is mine to do? Is it mine to give somebody money? Is it mine to sit and hold another's hand? Is it mine to be of comfort? Is it mine to just share wisdom, knowledge, and understanding? Just what is mine to do? Is it mine to be the one who decide to picket, to march, to be part of a civil disobedience or a civil unrest of something? Is it mine? What is mine to do? We ask that question. And when we try to find out in terms of this larger life, if that's mine to do, how do I know that I'm doing that which is mine to do? I want to give you a few clues. When you are being of service to somebody, whether you're being paid or not, when you're really being of service, what do you feel like when you're doing it? Do you resent it, or do you just feel like, oh yeah, this is what I'm supposed to be doing? I would do this whether I get paid or not. How does it make you feel? You feel that love, and it does not wear you out. I know some people say at the end of the day, they can be so tired, but when they think about what they were doing, they feel energized and regenerated simply through a thought of, I'm doing what I love, and I'm doing this and that. Love is feeding me, and it's satisfying me down to the very core of my soul. So the life that you're living at that moment is not your ego life. The life that you're living at that moment is that life of spirit. It's flowing easily and effortlessly through you. Ernest Holmes continues, he said, just as life belongs to the one who lives it, to the one who takes it, so the fuller life belongs only to one who scatters every good he has It is by giving of oneself to every person, every project, every association with zest, love, and friendliness that one sees the larger possibility in all things. Beauty instead of ugliness, love instead of hate, the divine hidden within the human. So when we help others, we can expect to receive help ourselves. When we decide to help others, we're releasing that love, and we experience it all the time. We are of service to our spouses, our lovers, our partners, our companions. We are of service. Oh, honey, would you do this? Yeah. In my sorority, the women call the husbands honeydews because the honeydews would help out. The activities that we were doing, they were not male-oriented, but the men would help out. They were the honeydews. When we are in service to people that we love, for instance, your co-workers, you say, oh my God, you're saying I'm in love with my co-workers? I'm saying that with your co-workers, that compassion still flows. That friendliness is fueled with love in some way. I look at my son, my oldest son, and his wife, and they look at one another and they just start grinning. Have you ever experienced people like that? You too? Yeah, I know. I see you. They just start grinning because beyond loving one another, they really like one another. And they always talk about stuff. And I'm like, well, I have no knowledge and understanding sometimes of what's going on there. Friends, good friends, show love to one another. Good friends will do things for one another that they probably would not do for someone else. And we're also giving of ourselves to a pet. When we have a pet in our house, something that cannot communicate you with English, Spanish, French, or whatever your language is, but yet that pet receives your love and gives love back. Love is a reciprocal thing of spirit. The big characteristics, once again, of the divine whole, the infinite spirit of life, intelligence, and love. So the life we say that we're living is the life of God. So the life that we're living with one another is one of intelligence, and it is one of love. Also, Ernest Holmes said in Creative Living, true givingness is the transmitting of the self to everything we do. It does not matter what it is. The outpouring of self into every undertaking is with an enthusiastic zest, love, kindness, and friendliness. That's what it's like. That is truly what givingness is like. Some of us can be a little slow on the uptake about what you want to do when it's your turn to do some giving or to take on some responsibility for something that's really a service in spirit. And you know, I'm as guilty as anybody else about that. I have a brother in Tennessee that wants to come this way, and I gave him my set of criteria that he had to follow for him to come out to be with me, and he just missed it. And it was at that point, I'm like, that's not gonna work. And then the spirit started talking to me like, what do you mean that's not going to work? Why wouldn't some other way work? Simply because within us is a creative process. And that creative process has a divine urge that's constantly pushing and wanting to come into fruition. And the same skills and ideas and techniques that I used in my previous job of let's look at various options, let's look at various ways to see how we can make this happen. Spirit said, okay, it's time to put on that cap because this spirit here is always present It's already here, and I'm ready to work out some ideas. Work out ideas. So even though I had set some standards and limits for my brother, Spirit says, oh no, those were yours. Here are mine. Here are mine. And you know what? My brother called, and he had this big smile on his face. And there was a reason for him not calling. And he shared that reason with me, and I was just so proud of him. I didn't know what to do. And you know what? It was like Spirit was saying, now, do you seriously want to withhold your hand? Do you seriously want to do that? And my answer is like, no, absolutely not. Because he had taken steps to do some things that were actually for his good. And one of the things is that he takes care of an older gentleman. And the older gentleman had a stroke. And he has that kind of love and concern and care for that person. Instead of saying, well, let me go and see if I can find, someone to replace me and to work here while I'm gone. He says, no, I'm going to stay right here, and I'm going to make sure that he's okay before I decide to take a vacation. That's his service. That's his service. So here's another word that we could use to determine whether or not this is ours to do. Since most of us seem to love the teachings of Jesus, we ask ourselves the question, what would Jesus do? What would Jesus do? Let me translate that for those of you that would want to hear it a different way. What would my spiritual teachings have me do? Does that match up with the spiritual principle? Does that fuel my soul and cause me to operate from a place of spirit? Does it? And if the answer is yes, then there you go. There you go. We ask that question about our service time and time again. And unfortunately, sometimes the relationships that we have at work don't pan out the way we would have this perfect model to be, but we still have to continue working at it, and working at it, and working at it. And so with that, I want to bring this to a conclusion in terms of your life isn't for you. It's a path of service, and it's of service to others. Please know that even in you being of service to someone else, you are being of service to yourself. What was the first thing that we talked about? As you give, it is given back to you. When you give love, love comes back. When you give like comes back. When you give wishy-washiness comes back. And on a prosperity note, clean out your closets and get rid of all of the unused clothes that you have. Empty those drawers. Give it away. Last Sunday we sang this song, I give myself away. I give myself away. I give myself away. So you, Spirit, can use me. I give myself away. And that is what we're doing when we give ourselves in service to the other. When we give ourselves in service to one another. It's not a hard teaching. The only thing hard is retraining the ego. Retraining the ego to know that it's no longer, how can I say it? The ego is no longer the prima donna. I'm basing it on me. The ego is no longer the prima donna. And when we actually allow ourselves to do as the spiritual teachings have shared with us, we prosper. So with that, let's just go again. Let's go again. In this moment, in this time, we're truly grateful for this awareness